I was reading a piece by our next guest on The Athletic today about him, and it was interesting. Alan Pardew saying, worried that Isak could be off. We heard, I think, from Kevin Hatchard there and from Ben Jacobs. Seb Stafford-Bloor, the German football correspondent for The Athletic, wrote this piece about Ekitike today. And why can't the two of them play together?
Sure.
Let's find out. Hi, Seb.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, I saw it was a really interesting piece. I mean, you made the point that obviously he'd been part of a goal-scoring partnership with Marmoush until fairly recently before he went to City.
Yeah, I mean, they were one of the most attractive partnerships in the Bundesliga for a while. They had their own compound nickname, Hugo Mar. And there's real cohesion, understanding and instinct between them, which is interesting because they were both quite similar and they both quite like to play in the same sort of areas. Marmoush central with a kind of a tendency to push left. Ekitike very much the same. And yet they had an understanding whereby they didn't take over each other's space. They're able to dovetail. They're able to react to what the other was doing with the ball. Some really, really wonderful moments. I'm guessing Newcastle fans already rushed to YouTube to find the highlights, so they'll have seen many of those things. But Ekitike is by no means a soloist. Everything that people say about his technical ability is true. He's a wonderful, exuberant, optimistic footballer, but intelligent as well, smart, cognizant of what his teammates are doing around him. And, not just, the question isn't just whether he could play with another forward, Alexander Isak, but what he could bring with other players. So runners from midfield and fullbacks going outside of him. He really is quite complete. Not the finished article, still learning the game, very much so. But, he's a very, very broadly talented player.
That's the thing, isn't it? I think you made this point today, that Isak and Marmoush are not the same player. They're different sorts of players. So when you look at Isak and what he brings to the table, how could you see that working, knowing how Ekitike likes to play?
Yes, it's a great question, actually, because I see Isak a bit more of an instinctive forward type, very, very clever, very subtle, brilliant finisher, probably a better finisher than Marmoush, I think. Ekitike in that relationship, you'd imagine him to be more of the facilitating partner. Like if you look at his data, and if you look at his kind of some of his underlying numbers, very creative. He scored really highly for key passes, through balls, shot creating actions, goal creating actions, those kind of things. And so he's very happy to kind of drop into roles which I suppose traditionally you'd expect a number 10.
I was going to say 10,
attack. Yeah, exactly, Charlie. Like an attacking midfielder, he has some of those abilities. While being a goal scorer and a focal point, he can do that. And which seems like it's a bit of a tendency for modern players now. Like he's one of those guys who seems to be pitched somewhere between a number 9 and number 10, with a little bit of both from both camps. And so you could well imagine a player of Isak's quality working around that, and Ekitike helping him, certainly.
You'd need a bit of a rejig of the system, the way the Newcastle generally like to play, to accommodate both of them, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd imagine so, Paul, because who's going to miss out? So, I mean, Ekitike at Eintracht Frankfurt obviously played a little bit on the left. And when Marmoush left and was signed by Manchester City, he moved into kind of a more centre forward position. So you'd imagine him play on the left of a 4-3-3.
Well, you've got Gordon in that sort of situation.
Harvey Barnes as well, of course, in there as well. So, but
I think the Champions League, you need cover, don't you? You need all these players,
I think so. I agree, Charlie, because obviously there are so many games, and when you look at a player like Ekitike, who's so explosive, so dynamic, Eintracht Frankfurt play a lot of counter-attacking football, a lot of transitions, so it's pretty high intensity. So having a player like that, are you expecting him to play 50 games a season? Probably not, but 35, 40, and that's probably healthy, and that's probably true for many of the elite players in the game right now, especially those who are participating in the Champions League and in the future Club World Cup as well, of course. So can't hurt to have another option that you can work around.
He struggled for a playing time at PSG. Was that just inexperience? I mean, it makes me think he's probably more likely to get in the team now because they're a younger side than when he was there. I'm assuming Mbappe was in his way when he was there.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of 6 and 2 threes, Charlie, because I think on the one hand, he went there very early. He went there at a time when, let's say, competition for places is pretty competitive. Yeah. Right? If you're a left-sided forward, don't go to PSG when Kylian Mbappe is there.
Maybe a mistake.
But when he moved to Frankfurt, I think it was kind of the making of him socially, because he grew up a little bit, he matured. everybody's got to be allowed to do that, grow into their 20s. And when he arrived in Germany, he didn't immediately go into the side. He arrived in January, and I think he kind of began to find his feet March, April. Scored an excellent goal against Bayern Munich in April 2024, if you want to look at that up. And that was the beginning point where he started to, I think, establish his status in the league a little bit. And I think that's to do with him, but also what Frankfurt are. They're very much a club who are geared towards developing talent. They would say they're kind of the role in the transfer market is to accelerate players, to make them attractive to teams right at the top of the game. And so their specialty is taking a lot of players of that age, between 20, 23, 24, and making sure they evolve, and fulfill their talent. And I suppose if you're in a social group with a lot of players of the same age, into a lot of the same things, in an international city like Frankfurt, where everybody kind of has their community because there's so many nationalities together, it's a bit more of a comfortable fit. In addition to which, the expectations at Frankfurt versus PSG, night and day, right? Yeah. Because there's, that they've qualified for the Champions League for the second time in their history this season. Well done to them. But clearly a very different sort of reality if you're a visible player there to what it must be like at the Parc des Princes.
Now, Ekitike won't be short of offers, Seb. So you can only imagine if there's substance in this Newcastle move and they're feeling positive, that Eddie Howe has kind of sold him a vision of regular first-team football, because there'll be plenty of other teams. If he's going there saying you'll be back up for Isak, I doubt if he'd be desperate to go to Newcastle. So he must have been sold a vision and told how he's likely to play within the setup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not sure what the player's attitude towards it is. I do know that he's not in a rush to leave Eintracht Frankfurt. I'd be happy to do another season. He does have Champions League football there, and it is a good side around him. We'll see. I mean, there's no agreement yet between the player and the club, as far as I understand it, and there's no agreement between the two clubs either. We reported that last night, me and my colleague David Ornstein. So we'll see. But yeah, he's clearly one of the most coveted players in Europe, and so making sure you sign him is not just about coming up with the cash, but making sure you have a plan for his future, because that's what's got him. That's presumably the lesson he's learned, right? He goes to Paris Saint-Germain. Yeah, he's kind of just one of many. Goes to Eintracht Frankfurt, who have a clear strategy for making sure that he becomes the player he can be, and the next step is going to have to involve much of the same. You'd have thought. So yes, whoever gets him will have to have sold him on their vision, of course.
And finally, just the other thing you make the point that he's not the finished article. You're buying potential, and I felt he scored that great goal early on in the game, and he had his moments at our place. But in the second leg, I kind of thought Van der Ven and Romero dealt with him pretty well. And when they needed that goal, they needed that little bit of magic. He couldn't quite come up with it. So he's not the finished article, is he?
It's a really good point, because I'll cover that game, and I remember thinking, when you give a player like Ekitike the opportunity to counter, when you make yourself vulnerable to transitions, extremely dangerous. Eintracht Frankfurt as a team, Eintracht Frankfurt's weakness as a team is when they come up against a low block, packed penalty box. And so in many ways, Spurs did their homework before that second leg, because they played very deep. They were there's a lot of direct football, a lot of long balls, and they kind of sacrificed style for just getting through, which paid off in the end. And that's something that he still has to learn, and that's natural, because Eintracht Frankfurt are not Bayern Munich in the context of German football. They don't play against teams that just sit back and hope for the best against them each week. And so that will have to be an adjustment. And there are all these sort of inefficiencies and little flaws to his game that will have to be tolerated. And I suppose it's part and parcel of buying a young player now, because you do have to pay these massive fees, but you're not signing a 26, 27-year-old mid-career guy for that money anymore. And that's just the reality. And, if you wait 2 or 3 more years for someone like Ekitike, he's going to be out of reach for all but, the very wealthiest clubs. Sure. So it's part of it. And it's a gamble that you have to take.
Sorry, just one more very briefly. This Luis Diaz story earlier on, apparently Bayern have made a bid. And it's been rejected sort of straight away by Liverpool. Do you expect them to come back? Is he the man they're after?
Yeah, they do like Diaz, but then they like a lot of other players too. Bayern are kind of reeling from missing out on Florian Wirtz. They had most of the eggs in the Wirtz basket, and then ever since they've kind of been rushing around Europe. Diaz is one of them, of course, but there are others on that list. Xavi Simons from RB Leipzig, of course, is one of them. Jamie Gittins, who joined Chelsea, he was of interest before he moved to Stamford Bridge. So, yes, he's one of the names on the list and certainly part of that shortlist. But, a lot of work to do for Bayern because the season's not too far away now. And, they're playing catch-up, really.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.